There are many enemies we like or dislike in TDS, such as an example that we like of enemies is the giant slow bosses that can be found in Fallen or any other game modes. Why? Well, mainly because they are extremely slow and, well, you can just farm as much money as possible from these guys. But there are also different types of enemies that we just generally hate or just dislike. So that's what we're going to be going over. Now, for clarity, the only enemies we are counting on this list are enemies that appear in more than one game mode. So any enemies that appear in only one game mode will not count since, well, they just appear in only one game mode, and it really just sounds like we're hating on this one specific game mode. So that's what we're going to be doing, more than one game mode types of enemies. However, there are also enemies that appear in multiple game modes but are just different variations, or at least like upgraded, or at least, you know, different styles or designs to them, remastered pretty much. So that's it.
Number 10.
Entering its way into the number 5 spot are the invisible or camouflage dudes that appear for the very first time on wave 13 for pretty much 80% of the game modes in this game. So these guys generally have a very specific counter to pretty much counter them in the entire game, and that is hidden detection. Or you could have just some troops that can spawn in vehicles, or minions that run on the path to run into them or just run them over, or you could just use your gadgets to get rid of them. If there are so many counters, then why are they at the number 5 spots? Well, that's mainly because most of the time you're not going to be having these so-called troops that spawn in stuff or many gadgets that can really kill them, and you're not willing to spend your pretty much rare and permanent gadgets on just these guys. So you're just gonna have to go ahead and focus on the very specific counter to counter these guys, which is hidden detection, which is behind a either small paywall or a pretty hefty paywall of a few $1,000s in order just to counter these very specific guys. Now, for some troops, this isn't a big deal at all whatsoever, mainly because, well, these guys, their upgrades are very cheap and getting hidden detection is not bad at all, such as an example of the accelerator. Thankfully, at the very next level, he immediately has hidden detection and does a crap load of damage, so he's not going to be included on this list. However, there are also many troops that do not have hidden detection and are behind a giant paywall. And that's not to mention, for an example, the Ranger doesn't have hidden detection for some reason. I don't know why, or even the heavy aircraft ones, apart from the ace pilots. However, most of the time you're not even going to be using the ace pilots, so that's out of the question. But to put it shortly, these guys have many counters, especially the, well, very big and speedy boss that appears later on, but like you are already going to have very hefty and powerful towers by then, so he's not a big deal whatsoever. But during the early stages, when you're trying to strategize of using money for farms or for other troops, it kind of pushes you down a path where you need to pretty much devote all of your time and money into a very specific troop just to be able to counter these guys on these very specific waves, and that don't appear for, like, I don't know, another 10 waves or something.
Number 4.
Spawning its way into the number 4 spot is gonna be the giant mystery bosses. Now, as we all know, in the older unremastered maps, or just the maps that haven't gotten any updates to visual designs and still use the old models, there are the mystery zombies, which after killing them, they spawn into a random zombie and, well, you have to kill them. And these can generally just be like very small, weak zombies, the ones that you see literally at the very first start of the game, to pretty much being a mini boss zombie. And then there are the giant purple ones that appear on around wave, I don't know, 32 all the way until like wave 40. And these guys can spawn, instead of a random enemy, you know, really like low weak enemy, they can spawn a random mini boss. And these bosses can range from being, well, a giant slow boss that we all love to pretty much a actual fast speedy tank boss. And if you're playing in Fallen mode, which I'm pretty sure is the only way to actually see these guys, which I'm not too sure of now that I think about it, they can spawn a huge speedy boss that has a hefty amount of HP. Not only can they spawn mini bosses that have a ginormous amount of HP, but they can also spawn an enemy, which is the Boomer, a self-exploding Now, again, these guys aren't that bad, especially when you've got like really powerful troops such as, you know, Accelerator, Pursuit, and stuff like that. However, it really depends when and where you guys kill these guys, because I mean, like, if you kill them very early on, then they're not going to be a big deal since you still have the rest of the map to take them down. However, if they get to around maybe somewhere around the middle part of the map and when you kill them, that's when it really starts to go downhill. And that's not to say that in hardcore they're even worse, because they can spawn these shield guys. So yeah.
Number 7.
Spamming its way into the number 3 spot is the blocky creature type things. I actually don't even know their names. I don't even remember, but I'm not going to look it up. So these guys start off pretty much as these green blocky looking Lego dudes. And after killing them, or at least killing one, they turn into a speedy blue Lego thing, and they are also very easy to kill. However, around the wave 32-ish mark, they are actually the replaced models or enemies for the mystery Titan purple things that we just discussed pretty much last time, or pretty much literally the very last spots. These guys are spammed as these giant pink-ish blocky titans, and after killing one, they spawn 2 smaller red looking titan looking things, and after killing those 2, they spawn a bunch of orange-ish, I believe, smaller looking enemies, and after killing them, they spawn a ton of blue fast Lego dudes, and after killing them, nothing actually happens, thank God. And yeah, that's why they are on this list, or at least this part of the list. It is a never-ending cycle of just, Jesus Christ, when will they just die for good? Like, I'm really wondering, is it just like one enemy that's pretty much inside of it all, and every single time you kill them, it just duplicates? Or is it just like a bunch of enemies scrunched up together into one big enemy, you know? Kind of like how Transformers do it. But anyway, the reason why they are on this list is mainly because if you're playing one of those very difficult maps such as, you know, Badlands, and you get to that part where the game just spams them like crazy, it can get pretty intense, especially when you don't have any splash damage troops to take them all out at the same exact time. Or Mortar is going to be S tier because, Jesus Christ, him taking down multiple of these guys with only one shot is just fantastic, especially those cluster bombs he's got. This guy is amazing to counter these guys. However, if you don't have any splash damage dudes and you're playing a map that doesn't have too much room, you're gonna have a really good time.
Number 6.
What's worse than an enemy that can spam its way to glory? What about an enemy that can literally Usain Bolt its way into the glory hole? Coming into the number 2 spots, we've got the circuits, or whatever the hell they're called in Polluted Wasteland. So, they barely made it onto this list because they only appear in 2 game modes. That is Polluted Wastelands and Hardcore. So, what is it about these guys that makes them incredibly awful that they have to be at the number 2 spots? Well, after a few seconds of just running into the map, just, you know, just chilling and not really doing too much, they will suddenly summon a bolt of lightning that comes from the sky and that hits all around them and, you know, hits amongst themselves of the electricity group. And after a few seconds, they will just start to speed up in pace. So they will go faster and faster and faster until eventually, after a few seconds, one of them summons a great bolt of lightning that is so immensely intense that it will speed them up to an insanely fast speed to where your troops won't even have time to pretty much react, and they will get an easy win. Now, obviously, this isn't that bad at all in Polluted Wasteland, since in the second quadrant of the circle, you spam a bunch of accelerators there to pretty much take these guys down, and since they have to do a bunch of circles around these quadrants, they aren't bad at all. However, in Hardcore, they are extremely more difficult. Why? And that is because I've already discussed it, and those are the Vindicators that can spawn. Not only can these guys speed up themselves, but they can also speed up their allies themselves. You will literally see the amalgamation, or whatever his name is, going so fast that your troops won't even have time to take down the minions themselves, or even the boss himself, since he's already making his way through the middle quadrant of the map. In Hardcore, they can also affect the boss himself, the Void Reaver, and also in Polluted Wastelands, which I've never seen, but I'm pretty sure that still does work. But still, The Vindicators in Hardcore can also be affected by these electric bolts of lightning that gives them insanely fast speed. You will just see a Vindicator sprinting around the map, sniping at your towers with this magical hammer, and you can't do anything about it because he is so fast your troops won't even have time in order to take these guys down to react.
Number 1.
Check this out.
Is this where you live? Also, I'm inside your walls.
What's worse than an enemy that can help its allies with speed, or that can pretty much spam a bunch of enemies in order to get a free easy win? What about an enemy that can literally harm your towers? The last and final spots, number 1, are the attacking troops, or at least enemies. And we're going to specifically talk about the Warden/Templar, the Boomers, and then finally the Fallen Guardians. Now, there are also a bunch of like mini bosses that appear on the final wave, such as like an example in Badlands there are the cowboy looking dudes with the guns, and then in Polluted Wasteland there are the miniature toxic guardians that can also stab your troops. However, the most popular one is the Fallen Guardians, so we're going to be talking about them that represent all the other mini bosses that also appear. So on around a wave, I would say 35, you basically come across the Warden or Templar, an enemy that can stun a bunch of your troops depending which one is the closest one, and if there's any troops nearby to that troop that is the closest one they're targeting will also be stunned. Now thankfully they won't kill your towers, but they will just stun them. However, it really affects which towers they are, attacking. If they are attacking very weak-ish towers, then it's not a big deal at all, because I mean they're just targeting very weak towers. However, if they're targeting very valuable towers such as Accelerator or I don't know, Rocketeer for some reason, then it can really make things go downhill really fast. Now obviously there are many counters to pretty much the Warden and Templar. The first thing is just to bait them into using their ability on a very weak tower at the very start while having the tower face away from all of your other valuable towers. That way they will just use their valuable ability on a very weak tower affecting no one else. And the second one is having a medic to pretty much heal a bunch of your towers from the stun ability, which is a final ability or at least a final upgrade the medic has, thankfully. Now most of the time you're not even going to be using the medic, so you're going to be going with option 1 of the baiting thing. Now that we're done with the Warden/Templars, let's talk about the Boomers. We already specifically said how they can spawn from the purple mystery blocky. At the final waves of Fallen mode or whatever, you've got the Fallen Guardians who will stab every single tower nearby until they are killed. And let's just say all of the other future game modes like Polluted Wasteland, Badlands don't make it any easier when they are also doing the exact same thing, having way more HP and are being pretty much protected by all of the bodyguard enemies that are spammed in their way into the map. These guys are just the worst, especially when you have no medic or no one to pretty much bait them into shooting to save all of your other troops. These guys, whew, you better hope they have mercy on your soul.